So today we're going to be talking about Sean O'Malley, probably the most hated guy in MMA right now after he lost his belt at UFC 306 to Merab. The guy's getting completely shit on social media. I mean, everybody's kind of just turned on the guy. But I seen this post right here on Twitter from Homelander MMA, and I thought there were a lot of interesting points on it. So let's talk about it. Does Sean O'Malley have the most fraudulent title reign in MMA history? So point number one, he got a number one contender fight against Petr Yan after the draw against Pedro Munoz. Now, if you remember back to UFC 2, whatever, I can't remember, Sean O'Malley was booked to fight Pedro Munoz, and this was at a time where Sean O'Malley had essentially just been fighting cans for ages in the UFC and just smoking these low-level, no-name guys, and Pedro Munoz was ranked inside the top 15 at the time, and this is going to be a real test for Sean O'Malley. Now, obviously, we didn't really get to see him get tested because Pedro Munoz got eye-poked, and the fight ended up a no contest, and then after that, Sean O'Malley did get the Petr Yan fight for the number one contender spot in the bantamweight division. Now, this point I'm going to make right here is going to be a common theme throughout this video. Sean O'Malley, fuck, I was nearly sick there. Sean O'Malley is in, was and still is in the position where the UFC see him as a megastar and they see him as a pay-per-view star. So he's going to get a lot of these opportunities that a lot of other people aren't going to get. Now, if you're going to shit on Sean O'Malley for getting this opportunity, you have to have the same energy for the likes of Umar Nurmagomedov, who his situation was worse. He didn't beat anybody in the top 15 in the bantamweight division, but yet was ranked number 10. And was given the Corey Sandhagen matchup, then pulled out of the Corey Sandhagen matchup with an injury, and then got rebooked for the Corey Sandhagen matchup. So that, in my opinion, is worse than what happened with Sean O'Malley getting the Yan fight. And then another fighter that you have to keep the same energy for then is Alex Pereira, a guy who beat essentially nobody in the UFC. Well, Bruno Silva's not a bad win in my opinion, but I have to give Alex Pereira that. But outside of that, he beat a lot of no-names and then was put right in there with Sean Strickland for a number one contender fight. So these things happen. If the UFC see you as a massive pay-per-view star and someone that they can make a lot of money off, you're going to get these advantages that a lot of fighters aren't going to get. Now, whether that is right or wrong, who knows? But that's the way the UFC operate. Now, next point is he was gifted a decision after an extremely clear 29-28 from Petr Yan. I can't really argue with this one, to be honest, because I remember watching Petr Yan, Sean O'Malley live, and I thought Petr Yan done enough to win, like a lot of people did. A lot of people say this fight is a robbery, but again, this goes back to my other point with Sean O'Malley. Essentially, the UFC seeing him as the face of the company next. I mean, if they see you as a pay-per-view star and see you as someone that they can make a lot of money off, I'm not saying it's right. You get these different advantages. I mean, another example of this would be Paddy Pimblett against Jared Gordon. In my opinion, Paddy Pimblett did lose that fight, but was gifted a decision because of the amount of momentum the guy had and the UFC seen him as a star. These things happen. Now, what I will say about the Petr Yan fight is a lot of people get on, especially now, that fight wasn't competitive and Petr Yan just mauled him. That wasn't the case. Sean O'Malley had a lot of success in there against Petr Yan, busting him up and showing that he is elite and he belonged at the top level of the bantamweight division. But I mean, Petr Yan does have like a cult-like following in the UFC, so a lot of people do just shit on Sean O'Malley for that performance and say that he robbed Yan. Although, like I said earlier, I do believe Yan won that at first watch. Next up, now this is a true point. This is 100% factual, right? The UFC forces Aljo to take the O'Malley fight with barely any recovery, and O'Malley then wins. Now, this is, like I said, this is factual because you can see this on the UFC documentary, which I'm surprised that they allowed because it made the UFC look really bad, in my opinion, with how they treated Aljo. Aljo just came off a 5-round fight with Henry Cejudo and essentially was kind of forced by the UFC to then take a fight against Sean O'Malley with a quick turnaround. Now, Aljo did say that he was a bit injured here and there, plus the UFC know that to go to bantamweight is a massive cut for Aljamain Sterling. And again, this goes back to if the UFC see you as a pay-per-view star, if your face fits, they will give you these advantages. I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying this is what happens. I mean, another example would be if you look at Israel Adesanya, for example, before the Sean Strickland fight was made, the original plan was to have Robert Whittaker fight Dricus du Plessis. Whoever won that fight, then make a massive quick turnaround to fight Adesanya. Why? Because Adesanya is one of the biggest stars in the UFC, and they wanted to give him an advantage. The UFC will never admit that, but that is true. That's what they do. And that's another example of that. Next up, though, but that is true. The UFC fucked Aljamain Sterling over badly in that situation. Next up, Duck's Merab, the clearest number one contender in the UFC, to fight number 6 Chito Vera instead. Right, now, there's a bit more context to this point, in my opinion. Uh, O'Malley beat Aljamain Sterling in August, September time. I can't really remember. And then said he wanted to be active and said that he wanted to fight Chito Vera in December. Now, obviously, that just didn't happen. And Sean O'Malley then didn't return until March for UFC 299, which is where he fought Chito Vera. Now, let's just be honest. Chito Vera versus Sean O'Malley 2, monetary-wise, was a bigger fight than Merab. Let's just call it what it was. At the end of the day, the UFC's a business, and that was why that fight was made. Sean O'Malley was the champion, and the UFC, you're right in the sense they wanted O'Malley to get a win. They didn't want him to go right back in there against the grappler. They wanted to try and build Sean O'Malley up as a star. The UFC want O'Malley to be the next Conor McGregor. They have been forcing him onto us as the next Conor McGregor for ages now. And obviously Merab just derailed that hype train. I fucking hate Merab. But anyway, yeah, so then he fights Chito Vera. Now, let's just talk about this for a second. Merab has been the number one contender, was the number one contender in the bantamweight division for ages and just wouldn't take his title shot. Now, that's because Aljamain Sterling was champion, but still Merab would have been able to fight for the belt way before O'Malley even got the chance if he had have just accepted, but he constantly was saying, no, it's his friend has the belt, he's gonna wait. So that most of that comes down to Merab, if I'm being honest, with him just not wanting to fight for the belt and taking other fights instead. And then fucking hell, I feel like I'm gonna be sick, holy shit. And then final point is, finally fights the number one contender in Merab, shits the bed and gets shut out completely. Yeah, ignore that voice break. Fucking hell, man, I feel like I'm gonna be sick, holy shit. But the show goes on. Yeah, I mean, I can't even argue this. Sean O'Malley got smoked. Did have success in the fight, yes, but not much outside of the 5th round. I mean, why he didn't throw those front kicks from early on is beyond me. But yeah, I thought Sean O'Malley did look off in that fight, and that's not me making excuses. It's either Sean O'Malley was off, and we'll hear more about that as the weeks go on, or Merab is just that good that Sean O'Malley couldn't get into his flow, couldn't get his game plan going. It's probably a mixture of both, to be honest. But yeah, Merab beat him. I wouldn't say Sean O'Malley shit the bed. He did get completely shut out. I mean, I am just kind of coping here, to be honest. I'm not the biggest Sean O'Malley fan, to be honest. I think the guy is pretty cringy on the mic and in scenarios like that with media. But his fight style, arguably the best to watch in the UFC. Obviously, UFC 306 kind of changes that, but if you go back and watch his fight, for example, against Jan, you watch the KO against Aljo, which makes me cry because I'm the only Aljamain Sterling fan on the face of the earth, and then you watch the Chito Vera fight, O'Malley is a fun fighter to watch. Now, just finishing up on those points right here, I think this is something that a lot of people aren't talking about. Sean O'Malley's entire UFC career, the guy has faced essentially adversity twice. Now, Pedro Munoz ended up a no contest. Jan did not let Sean O'Malley get his own way. He put up a fight against Sean O'Malley, and we seen that was a razor close fight. Right, Aljamain Sterling really offered nothing. Let Sean O'Malley basically control the fight. Really offered up not much resistance because he got KO'd early, so we didn't get to see anything there. Merab put up a bit of resistance against Sean O'Malley, and look what happened. It kind of seems like that if you don't let Sean O'Malley lead the dance, or if you don't let Sean O'Malley impose his will on you right away, and you fight back a bit, it seems like Sean O'Malley really struggles. I don't know. I mean, that's just what I think. I feel like if you don't break, if you don't let Sean O'Malley lead the dance and you put up a bit of fight against him, it seems, not that he breaks, but yeah, he doesn't fight the same. But yeah, I do feel like the guy is being overhated now. I feel like a lot of people are just disregarding Sean O'Malley's skill. He's definitely the second, third, I think he's second still. I think he's second now, the second best bantamweight currently in the UFC. I feel like he still wipes out a lot of the guys inside the top 10 of the bantamweight division. He beats Corey Sandhagen. A lot of people are talking about that fight. O'Malley KOs Corey Sandhagen. Henry Cejudo, a guy who keeps piping up, which I think is going to be O'Malley's next fight. And I think that would actually be a really good fight for O'Malley to take, because Henry Cejudo is an Olympic gold medalist in terms of wrestling, and realistically Sean O'Malley is one fight away. If he wins his next fight, he will definitely fight for the belt again. So I feel like if he goes through another camp based for a grappler, I feel like that would do O'Malley the world of good. Plus, Henry Cejudo's talking a lot of shit. He has a pretty big-ish name in the UFC. He's a arguably top 15 fighter of all time, so it would be a really good name for Sean O'Malley to get on his resume, and I think Sean O'Malley would make light work of Henry Cejudo, to be honest. But yeah, this is just one of those things. I mean, it happens all the time to the top stars. When they lose, they get completely shat on, but I do think a lot of people are just not giving Sean O'Malley the respect he deserves. He is still an elite fighter in my opinion, and will definitely be champion again. But let me know your opinions in the comments below, and as always, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and I'll see you again in the next one.